This is Caleb, and in Caleb's first 10 days during our beginner training program, he was able to get 173 flights, which is just absolutely bonkers. Caleb, you were a stellar pilot, and I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to teach you how to fly. This video is about some of the things we have learned over the last 12 years of teaching paramotoring, and some of the things that we do very differently that we've learned through split testing certain things, trying different things, and handcrafting the formula, the structure, the training program to create the most successful, safe students we possibly can. The first thing I really want to talk about is that you cannot let mistakes carry on. You cannot let mistakes go. You cannot overlook mistakes. You, as the instructor, have the ability to set the tone in the pilot's mind, create the habits, and build, nurture the pilot to be whatever it is you want them to be. This includes bad habits. This includes mistakes. This includes muscle memory. This includes mindset things. This includes how they operate, think, and function. You're setting the tone. You're setting the structure. You are building this pilot that may or may not listen to you, but you have the opportunity to mold them. There's a saying in aviation that every decision a pilot makes is based on the information and training they've received beforehand. So what you tell them, what you show them, how you teach them, and most importantly, what you let them do and don't let them do make a difference. So this boils down to a couple of different things. The first thing is when the student is learning the actual physical thing, the kiting, the ground handling, the hooking in, the launching, the landing, the motor starting, pre-flighting, priming, you cannot let the mistakes go on. You cannot let them get sloppy. You have to make sure that every single time they do every single thing that they are doing it correctly. You're setting two things. First off, you're building that muscle memory. Every time they do something, they're building a muscle memory. If you're letting them do it wrong, that muscle memory is getting built wrong. So it is extremely important that you're quick to nipping at any bad things, any bad habits, any bad muscle memory, any bad movements, any of those things. The next thing is the tone in the pilot's mind. How are things functioning? How are they thinking? If you as the instructor never ever let them do X, Y, or Z. Let's use ground starting as an example. Let's use hitting people with the cage. Let's use starting the motor facing people. You never ever let those things slip by. You never let the pilots do that. You set the tone in their mind as to what to expect, what to do, and how to function when they go home, because that's how it was. You're setting that's how it was. You're setting that tone. You're drawing the line. It is way more important as an instructor to draw those safety lines, those mental safety lines, those thought processes, the judgment calls, the choices, how we think, how we operate to show them than you think. And that boils down to being an example as well. The instructor cannot be saying one thing and doing another thing. If I'm going to be preaching to our students about X, Y, or Z, you bet I'm going to be doing X, Y, or Z. I'm going to live up to what we are preaching. I'm going to be an example for the students. Let me give you an example in the real world of how this applies. One of the things we're very adamant about here at Backcountry is that you never start your motor facing people, you never hit people with the cage, and you're very, very, very aware of that motor when you're going to start it. You go to a fly-in and people are very sloppy with this. They start their motors really close to you, facing you, doing things that you would just absolutely be shocked that they even do. Well, that's a tone you're setting in the pilot's mind. Here at the class, I never, ever, ever let a pilot get sloppy with that. I call them out, I stop them, I halt them, I start them over. Every single time they start that paramotor, there's a process, and they follow that process, and there's a protocol, and they follow the protocol, and there's rules and lines drawn in the sand that they do and do not do, and I never let them get sloppy with that. And if you go on for 10 days in a row, never letting little mistakes like that, never letting little judgment calls, little choices go on like that, guess what? When they go home, that's how it was. That's how it's going to continue to be. You're drawing that line. You're setting the expectation. And you're not only setting the expectation, you're holding them to that expectation. And that goes for every aspect of paramotor training. That goes for hooking in. That goes for laying a glider out. That goes for starting the paramotor. You'd be so surprised at how many people start paramotors in an unsafe way, in an unsafe location, putting other people at risk. We never allow stuff like that. That goes for once they're airborne. That goes for decision making when it comes to low flying, acrobatic flying, progressing, judgment calls when it comes to weather, cutoffs, protocols. All of those little things. The most important thing, in my opinion, that an instructor is doing is not necessarily teaching you how to fly the aircraft, but instead drawing the outline of how you as the pilot are going to function, operate, think, and decide. Choose what you're going to do once you leave that training. It is the judgment, it is the outline, it is the line in the sand, it is the parameters in which you are going to lean into to make decisions flow and choose and take action after you leave the class. Those are things that we're very adamant about, and I personally believe we make the safest or some of the safest paramotor pilots out there because of this lack of willing to let certain things go on. I'll never allow a pilot to do things wrong. I'll never allow them to build bad habits. I'll never allow them to make unsafe choices. I will call them out. I will draw the line in the sand for them. I will make very certain they know what they're doing and why they shouldn't or should be doing it. And anytime they're under my supervision, they'll never be allowed to do certain things. And I believe every instructor should be a little bit more strict on that. I think every single paramotor instructor and people who have any level of influence in the community, people who are being looked up to, you can't let these things go on. You know it's bad. You know ground starting isn't a great thing. You know starting the paramotor with the prop 3 feet from someone else's face isn't a great thing, but why are you letting it go on? You cannot let those things go on. I think some of the biggest things is motor out risk. One of the things we're extremely adamant here at Backcountry PPG is to never allow pilots to take motor out risk unnecessarily. When you take off, the first thing you should do is climb and gain altitude to a safe height to where if your engine was to die, you could make a nice landing. And that really comes down to climbing for 3 more seconds versus pilots whom take off and immediately turn downwind, crosswind, start performing acrobatic maneuvers. You don't even know how your glider's flying. You don't know if there's a compression tangle, stress tangle, riser twist, brake wrapped around, anything. You have no idea what's going on with your aircraft, yet you're immediately making this decision to start pushing it to the edge. And that edge may be way lower than you think it is because there's a compression tangle, stress tangle, or anything going on, yet you don't know because you didn't check. See, we'll never let that go on here. Not because we want to kill all the fun. In fact, we want to have every ounce of fun we possibly can. But we want to have every ounce of fun we possibly can without taking unnecessary risk. So one of the things as well that we're very adamant about is risk management. We have a lot of conversations about risk. We outline certain crashes, certain situations, certain things. We draw the lines in the sand, we discuss it, and we really make sure that the pilot's mind understands what leads to good choices, what leads to bad choices, where those lines are, where the do's and don'ts are, what you shouldn't do, what you should do, and why. If the pilots are going out there and they don't know what risk they're taking, the teacher, the instructor, their mentor didn't help outline X, Y, or Z and is in some way setting them up for failure. Now, there are certain things that we cannot always cover. There's a lot of different variables, but we at our ground school have a lot of things written down, a lot of structure to it to make sure that any pilot that comes through our training program gets a full picture painted as to what they should and shouldn't do, the do's and the don'ts, where the risk points are, how to minimize your risk and maximize your fun. Because ultimately, we also want to have a good time. And it's about having a good time and taking as little risk as we possibly can in the process. I don't want to get hurt. I don't want any students to get hurt. I don't want anybody to get hurt. And I want to have as much fun as I possibly freaking can. So the question really comes down to, how can you maximize that fun and minimize the risk? And that's a conversation we have a lot at our training program. One of the other things that I have seen that has made a very big difference with our students' success rate in their launches, landings, and flights is a really thorough briefing about the flight, walkthrough about the flight on the ground. Pilots are going to know the exact process. We've laid out the launching process, we've laid out the landing process, and we've laid out the in-flight process. You know it, you've talked about it, you've walked through it, we've visualized it, we physically have pretended to do it. We've done all of these things so you know exactly what to expect as you actually venture off on your first flight. I have found that this little thing has made a huge increase in success when pilots go to fly because there isn't question marks. There aren't areas they're not sure what to do, waiting for our commands. They're not doing things incorrectly. Example, they're not taking off and jumping in the seat. They're not taking off and mashing all the brakes because guess what? We've briefed about it. We've watched videos. We've talked about it. You know exactly what you're supposed to do from step 1 to 100. Walking through this process has really improved our success rate and brought down the amount of broken equipment we have had and brought down the amount of failed launches we have had. This year, we have actually broken very few props. We have broken very few pieces of equipment because I believe this briefing, maybe it's that we just do such a stellar job, and maybe that's true, but I also believe that briefing, walking pilots through, setting outlines, expectations, drawing the mental picture, showing videos, showing all of those things really helps reduce those little risk points, those little spots where people catch themselves and break equipment, primarily propellers. And that's just one of those things that we're now very adamant about. We're painting that picture, we're outlining, we're briefing, we're talking through it. You know exactly what to expect before you venture out on your first flights. One of the next things that we're very adamant about and that we try very hard to do is ensure that our students have really great glider control. Now, glider control, also known as kiting or ground handling, is the art of controlling the paraglider on the ground hooked in with a harness, not with a paramotor, not flying in the sky. Glider control is your ability to keep that glider under your control while you're on the ground, regardless of what the wind, weather, and you are doing. Now, what we've seen over the last decade is that the better the pilot is at glider control, the more consistently they can nail their launches and landings. And more importantly, the better they can handle themselves in turbulent conditions. Your glider control ability is going to directly translate to your flying abilities. If you're really stellar, which apparently is the word of the day, at controlling your glider on the ground, you're going to be really stellar at controlling that glider in the air when it starts to handle itself weird, whether it starts to go to collapse or starts to stall or whatever. The feeling, the process, how things work on the ground directly translate to how things work in the sky. The other thing is that your success rate with your launches drastically increases the better you are at glider control. Because ultimately, when you go to launch the paramotor, you need to inflate that glider from a limp bag to a loaded, full of air profile that then you need to control all the way until liftoff. If you don't have that control part, you're just kind of rolling the dice, and you can get good at rolling that dice and get a pretty high success rate, but your consistency, 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10, 5 out of 10, 7 out of 10, is lower than the pilot who has really good ground control. The pilot who really knows how to control that glider, really knows how to keep it in their control. They know what it feels like. They know how it moves. They know what to do and how to do it. The pilot that's really good at glider control is going to have a better success rate launching. They're going to be able to handle themselves in more conditions, and they're definitely going to know how to handle themselves when the wind conditions pick up, when things get a little more dynamic, when it gets turbulent, when it gets to the active piloting side of things. The pilot will know more so how to handle themselves. An example I use for this is if you look at any of the really good paramotor pilots out there, chances are they are also good at glider control. And I don't want to sit here and preach about why you need to get good at kiting. It is well known in the community that the better you are at that, the better you are at flying. Don't underestimate it. Don't overlook it. Don't ignore it. Invest time into your glider control. Okay, so in conclusion, there are a handful of things that we have really learned over the last decade, especially over the last couple of years, that have made a big difference in the success rate of our students. And I would like to congratulate Caleb on so many insane flights. Caleb came out to the field and every single day was just as many flights as he possibly could, getting upwards of 53 flights in one single night. Now, there's a lot of back and forth on the flights. A lot of these were touch and goes, where you come to a full stop, don't drop the glider, and relaunch. Motor still running, didn't kill it. And, we go back and forth on whether that's considered a flight, but I believe that is a flight as you are doing the full process of a landing, the full process of a launch. The only thing you're not doing is the disabling of the glider and the inflating of the glider. So with all of that being said, congratulations, Caleb, as well as all the other students who have been crushing their flights. Our success rate at the class of students flying is creeping close to 100%. We very rarely have students come through that don't end up flying through the 10-day training program. If you're interested in learning more about our training program, our beginner or adventure training, which is a 5-day clinic to help students who've already begun flying progress, get better, venture off, fly camp, and do a whole bunch of fun stuff. If you're interested in more information on that, visit our website, backcountryppg.com, or give us a call at 801-599-1684. My name is Trevor Steele. I appreciate you watching the video. Please hit the like button, subscribe button, and we will see you next time. Take it easy.